The nightmares had started again, dragging me back to the hellish memories of war that I thought I'd left behind. That's why I found myself hiking alone through the dense forests of Black Ridge Mountains on a crisp October morning. 3 tours in Afghanistan, specialized training in explosive detection, and years of therapy hadn't managed to silence the ghosts completely, but the mountains, they helped. There was something about the solitude, the clean air, and the absolute absence of anything resembling a war zone that soothed my PTSD-riddled mind. Or at least it usually did. But today, the tranquility shattered when I heard it, a bark, low, ragged, but unmistakable. My heart sank as every hair on my body stood on end. The wilderness played tricks sometimes, transforming innocent sounds into threats, but this wasn't some trick of the mind. This was real. I froze mid-step, water bottle halfway to my lips, debating whether to investigate or turn back. Hikers disappearing while chasing strange noises was the beginning of countless cautionary tales. Yet curiosity or perhaps duty pulled me forward. As I pushed off the marked trail, the terrain grew steeper, rockier, until I stumbled upon a limestone crevice partially obscured by overgrown vegetation. It wasn't quite a cave entrance, more like a deep fissure that widened near ground level. Without the barking to guide me, I might have walked right past it. But there, chained inside, stood Valor Belgium Malinois, unmistakably military trained despite his deteriorated condition. His coat, once the rich sable characteristic of his breed, was now matted and dull, ribs pressed visibly against his sides. But his stance, that was pure soldier. Feet planted firmly, body angled protectively, head low and forward, he blocked access to whatever lay deeper within. What happened next sent chills down my spine. When I took one cautious step closer, the growl transformed into a snarl, teeth bared in an unmistakable warning. Do not come closer. This dog was prepared to fight to the death if necessary, even though he was clearly starving and chained to the ground. My instincts screamed danger, but beneath the terror, I recognized something extraordinary. This wasn't just aggression, it was resolve. Valor wasn't merely defending himself. He was guarding something far more precious than his own life. As I retreated slowly, keeping eye contact but maintaining a non-threatening posture, my mind raced with questions. How had a military dog ended up here? What or who was he protecting? And most importantly, how could I get past him without triggering a violent response? Every second felt like an eternity, each breath heavier than the last. Valor's amber eyes glowed with determination, reflecting both exhaustion and unwavering loyalty. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just another rescue mission. It was a test of courage, compassion, and trust. The moment Valor allowed me to step closer, I realized the true gravity of the situation. Beyond the steadfast guardian lay Jaime small, fragile, and barely clinging to life. My heart sank as I knelt beside him, my headlamp illuminating a face so pale it seemed translucent. His lips were cracked, his breathing shallow, and when I touched his arm, the coldness of his skin sent a chill through me. It was clear he had been without proper food or water for days, perhaps even longer. Every movement he made was weak, his small body trembling with exhaustion. For a child who should have been running wild in playgrounds, laughing with friends, Jaime looked like a shadow of himself, a ghost haunting this desolate cave. James, you need to make a decision, I told myself, but the weight of it crushed me. The darkness surrounding us wasn't just physical. It pressed down on my chest, suffocating any sense of hope. Any sound we made could echo into the night, drawing unwanted attention from whoever or whatever was hunting them. Each breath Jaime took sounded impossibly loud in the oppressive silence, every wheeze a potential death knell. I knew I couldn't leave him here, but attempting a rescue came with its own risks. If those pursuing him found us now, neither of us would survive. Yet, doing nothing meant condemning Jaime to an inevitable fate. Valor's presence loomed large over both of us, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He hadn't abandoned his post, not even to nuzzle Jaime or show signs of comfort. His loyalty was absolute, unwavering, a testament to his training and bond with Miguel Rodriguez. But that same devotion complicated everything. How could I separate Jaime from the dog who had kept him alive? And how could I ensure Valor didn't view me as a threat if I tried? I reached out slowly, my hand hovering above Jaime's shoulder. "Hey there, buddy," I whispered, my voice cracking under the strain of forced calm. "You're going to be okay. We're going to get you out of here." Jaime stirred slightly, his eyelids fluttering open. His dark eyes met mine, filled with confusion and fear. He tried to speak, but only a raspy sound escaped his lips. "Water," he managed finally, the single word piercing through me like a knife. My pack contained only a small bottle of water, barely enough for Jaime's needs, let alone Valor's. Still, I poured a few drops onto Jaime's lips, watching as they quivered before parting slightly to accept more. Valor watched intently, his stance unchanging. I could feel the tension radiating off him, a coiled spring ready to snap at the slightest provocation. The stakes were painfully high. One wrong move, and I'd lose not just Jaime's trust, but also Valor's tenuous tolerance. As I worked to stabilize Jaime, my mind raced. The cave offered no shelter beyond concealment. It was damp, freezing, and completely exposed to the elements. Without immediate medical attention, Jaime wouldn't last much longer. But getting him out required navigating treacherous terrain, while avoiding detection by those who had driven Miguel to such desperate measures. Every second spent deliberating felt like another nail in Jaime's coffin. Valor let out a low growl, snapping me back to reality. His ears twitched toward the entrance, catching something I couldn't hear. My pulse quickened. Had they found us already? Or was it just the wind playing tricks? Either way, time was running out for all of us. As Jaime grew more comfortable during our sessions, he began to reveal fragments of the life he'd shared with his father before ending up in that cave. What struck me most was how Miguel had turned survival into a game a twisted yet brilliant way, to prepare his young son for the unimaginable. "Valor always stands between me and the door," Jaime explained one afternoon, his small hands gesturing animatedly as though describing a fun role from a childhood pastime. "Dad said it's like having a superhero guard." The simplicity of the explanation belied its tactical precision. This wasn't just about keeping Jaime safe, it was about conditioning him to instinctively prioritize security without realizing the gravity of the situation. Other rules followed: never look out windows, stay low when cars pass by, only talk in whispers after sunset. To Jaime, these were exciting challenges, part of an elaborate adventure where he played the role of a covert operative alongside Valor. But to me, they painted a chilling picture of calculated preparation. Miguel hadn't just hidden his son, he'd armed him with tools to survive, masking them as playful directives. Each role was a thread in a tightly woven web of counter-surveillance tactics designed to keep Jaime alive if things went south. The revelation deepened when Jaime pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a crayon drawing that stopped me cold. In it, a figure stood at a distance, partially obscured by trees, watching over a crude representation of the cave. Beside the figure, Jaime had written in shaky letters, "Dad is here, but far away so the bad men don't see." My stomach tightened as I studied the image. This wasn't abandonment. It was strategic positioning. Miguel hadn't simply left Jaime, he'd positioned himself as an overwatch, maintaining visual contact while drawing danger in the opposite direction. I knelt beside Jaime, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Did your dad tell you why he stayed far away?" I asked gently. Jaime nodded solemnly. He said he had to make sure the bad men followed him instead of finding me and Valor. He promised he'd come back when it was safe. The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. Miguel's decision to separate himself from his son wasn't born of desperation. It was a deliberate sacrifice, a father choosing to become bait to protect his child. That night, as I reviewed Jaime's drawing under the dim light of my cabin, the implications crystallized. Miguel's actions suggested he was still operational, actively surveilling the area around the cave. The drawing wasn't just a child's memory, it was evidence of ongoing tactical planning. Every detail pointed to a man who understood the stakes and was willing to risk everything to buy time for his son. Valor's unwavering vigilance made sense now. He wasn't just guarding Jaime, he was holding the line until Miguel could return, or until someone trustworthy arrived to take over. But the realization came with a pang of dread. If Miguel was still out there, monitoring his son, then he was also exposed, vulnerable to capture or worse. The cartel's increased activity in the region hinted at a closing net, and every second counted. As Valor rested nearby, his ears twitching at every sound, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. Miguel's brilliance as a strategist was undeniable, but even the best plans could unravel under relentless pursuit. When the rescue team finally arrived, their presence did little to ease the tension in the cave. Valor, though visibly weakened by starvation and dehydration, remained a formidable obstacle. His amber eyes glowed with an intensity that belied his deteriorated condition. Each muscle in his body coiled like a spring ready to snap at any perceived threat. Every step we took closer felt like walking on a razor's edge. One wrong move could send him into a frenzy. I knew from experience how unpredictable military working dogs could be when pushed beyond their limits, and Valor was operating far past his breaking point. The rangers and medical personnel stood back, watching as I approached Valor again, this time with more urgency but no less caution. My years of handling canine units taught me that these dogs respond best to calm authority, so I kept my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Easy, soldier," I murmured, crouching low to appear less threatening. Valor's growl vibrated through the confined space, a sound both menacing and heartbreaking. He wasn't just defending Jaime. He was clinging to the last shred of duty drilled into him by Miguel Rodriguez. Each breath he took seemed labored, yet his resolve never wavered. It was clear he wouldn't give up his post without a fight, not even for those trying to help. As I worked to establish trust with Valor, something shifted in the shadows behind him. A faint rustle caught my attention, followed by a weak whisper that stopped everyone cold. "Valor?" The name barely carried across the damp air, but it hit us like a thunderclap. Jaime had stirred, his small voice trembling with exhaustion and confusion. For a moment, all movement ceased. No one dared breathe. Was this a sign of recovery or a desperate cry from a child slipping further away? Valor reacted instantly, his head snapping toward the sound, ears perked and posture shifting slightly. That single call broke through his rigid focus, softening the edges of his aggression. Still, he didn't abandon his position entirely, torn between responding to Jaime's plea and maintaining his defensive stance. The conflict played out in his movements, a hesitant step forward, then a retreat back to his guard post. His loyalty was undeniable, but it came at a cost. Every second spent weighing his options drained what little energy he had left. "Stay calm, everyone," I instructed under my breath, sensing the collective anxiety ripple through the team. One misstep now could undo everything. I reached slowly for the collapsible water bowl I brought, placing it carefully within Valor's reach. "You're doing great, boy," I said, injecting every ounce of reassurance I could muster into my tone. Valor hesitated, his gaze flickering between me, the water, and Jaime. Hunger went out momentarily, and he lapped at the water with frantic urgency before retreating once more. Meanwhile, Jaime's fragile voice called out again, weaker this time. "Valor, where are you?" His words were slurred, barely coherent, but they carried an emotional weight that made my chest tighten. This wasn't just a frightened child, it was a boy who trusted Valor with his life, who believed the dog would protect him until his father returned. The bond between them transcended mere survival. It was forged in love, loyalty, and shared trauma. I signaled for the paramedic to prepare while keeping my attention fixed on Valor. If we couldn't get him to relax soon, Jamie's fragile state might deteriorate further. The clock was ticking, and every decision felt like a gamble. Valor's unwavering dedication was admirable, but it was also our greatest challenge. The tension escalated to a breaking point when Agent Harper revealed the cartel's relentless pursuit of Jaime and Valor. Private investigators had been hired, their movements tracked by an intricate web of surveillance cameras scattered across the region. Every step we took, every interaction between Jaime and Valor was under constant scrutiny, each misstep potentially fatal. The weight of this reality pressed down on me as I realized that our every move was being analyzed, dissected, and weaponized against us. Valor, ever vigilant, seemed to sense the danger too. His amber eyes darted more frequently toward the tree line, his body tensing at sounds that previously wouldn't have raised concern. For the first time since I'd found him chained in that cave, he looked not just like a protector, but like a soldier bracing for battle. Then came the encrypted message from Colonel Reeves' contact, a former operator who had served with Miguel Rodriguez. The text was brief but chilling. Compromise confirmed inside military channels. Trust no official oversight. Protect the boy at all costs. My hands trembled slightly as I read it again, the implications sinking in. Someone within the very structure meant to safeguard soldiers like Rodriguez, and now Jaime had betrayed them. This wasn't just about evading cartel hunters anymore. It was about navigating a minefield of corruption where allies could be enemies, and even protocol might lead to disaster. "James, you're walking a razor's edge here," I told myself, pacing the length of my cabin while Valor watched me with unblinking focus. If I followed standard procedures, reported everything through official channels, I risked exposing Jaime and Valor to forces far beyond my control. But if I went rogue, if I prioritized protecting them over adhering to the law, I risked becoming exactly what I'd fought against during my service, someone operating outside the system. Yet, deep down, I knew there was only one choice. Miguel hadn't entrusted his son to Valor just so some compromised chain of command could fail him again. That dog had starved himself nearly to death fulfilling his mission. How could I do any less? I reviewed the intelligence Jaime had shared, the locations of safe houses, the "as your skies follow the storm" verification phrase, the locate haven command, and cross-referenced them with the maps spread across my table. Valor stood nearby, his nose occasionally brushing the edges of the papers as though he recognized something in the terrain markings. He did. Of course he did. Valor wasn't just guarding Jaime. He was carrying pieces of the puzzle Miguel had left behind. Each bark, each shift in posture felt like a clue I couldn't afford to ignore. But time was slipping away. Harper's surveillance team had doubled their presence around my property, ostensibly for protection, though I suspected they were also monitoring us. Cartel operatives had been spotted closer to Black Ridge than ever before, their search patterns growing tighter, more aggressive. And now, with evidence of betrayal within military ranks, paranoia clawed at the edges of my mind. Was anyone truly trustworthy? Could I rely on Agent Harper? On Colonel Reeves? Or was every communication a potential trap? Valor let out a low growl, snapping me back to the present. His ears twitched toward the window, catching something I couldn't hear. Outside, the forest loomed dark and silent, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching. The stakes had never been higher, not just for Jaime and Valor, but for everyone connected to this case. One wrong decision, one careless moment, and we'd lose everything Miguel had sacrificed to protect. During one of Jamie's visits, as he and Valor played in the backyard under my watchful eye, something unexpected happened. Jamie paused mid-laugh, his expression suddenly serious. Dad said I should only trust someone who says, "As your skies follow the storm," he whispered, looking at me with wide, trusting eyes. The phrase hit me like a thunderclap, a challenge response authentication protocol. Simple enough for a child to remember, but complex enough to stump anyone unfamiliar with its significance. It was clear Miguel had embedded layers of security into every aspect of Jaime's survival plan. But the weight of that knowledge pressed heavily on me. If this phrase fell into the wrong hands, if cartel operatives or compromised military personnel discovered it, they could exploit it to locate Jaime or manipulate him into revealing more. I nodded slowly, masking my anxiety behind a calm exterior. "It's a very important role," I said gently, careful not to probe too deeply. "Your dad made sure you'd be safe?" Jamie seemed reassured, but I couldn't shake the ominous feeling that we were sitting on a powder keg. Every word Jamie spoke felt like both a lifeline and a potential trap. The stakes were impossibly high. Protect the boy while deciphering clues that could lead us to Miguel, or worse, lead others straight to him. But things took an even darker turn in the days that followed. Jaime began having nightmares, vivid, harrowing visions that left him trembling in the middle of the night. He would wake up screaming about black cars chasing them, the sound of gunfire echoing in the distance, and his father's voice urging him to run faster, hide deeper. "They're coming," he cried one evening, clutching Valor so tightly his knuckles turned white. His small frame shook with fear, and no amount of reassurance seemed to calm him. These weren't just dreams. They were fragments of memories, echoes of the trauma he'd endured before finding refuge in the cave. The psychological toll was evident. Jaime alternated between clinging to Valor and withdrawing into himself, his bright spirit dimmed by the shadows of fear. Dr. Merst noted during her sessions that these episodes suggested Jaime was processing suppressed memories, piecing together events he wasn't fully conscious of when they occurred. For me, each nightmare carried another layer of urgency. The black cars, the relentless pursuit, it all pointed to the cartel's continued hunt for Miguel and, by extension, his son. And if Jaime remembered too much, revealed too much, it could put both of them in mortal danger. Valor, ever vigilant, responded to Jaime's distress with unwavering loyalty. When the boy woke screaming, the dog would position himself between Jaime and the perceived threat, growling low in his throat despite being miles away from any real danger. It was heartbreaking to witness, the bond between them forged, not just in love but in survival. Yet there was something else in Valor's behavior, a tension that mirrored my own unease. He wasn't just guarding Jaime. He was waiting, listening, as though expecting trouble to arrive at any moment. Every nightmare, Jaime recounted, felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place and another warning sign flashing red. The code phrase, the dreams, the constant surveillance looming over us, it was all interconnected. And as much as I wanted to shield Jaime from further harm, I knew we couldn't afford to ignore the clues buried within his subconscious. Each fragment of memory brought us closer to Miguel, but also closer to those hunting him. One wrong move, one slip of information, and we'd lose everything. The climb to the observation post was grueling, a test of endurance for both Valor and me. The mountain air turned biting cold as we ascended higher, each step becoming a battle against gravity and exhaustion. The wind howled through the pines, slicing through our layers of clothing like knives. My boots slipped on patches of frost-covered rock, forcing me to rely heavily on the specialized harness I'd rigged for Valor. Despite his recovering strength, he moved with unwavering determination, his amber eyes reflecting the dim moonlight as he scanned the terrain ahead. Every sound, the crackling of branches, the distant hoot of an owl felt amplified in the oppressive silence of the wilderness. It wasn't just paranoia. Cartel patrols were known to operate under cover of darkness, their movements methodical and relentless. One wrong move could expose us. When we finally reached the concealed position, Valor's behavior shifted from cautious navigation to heightened alertness. He positioned himself between me and the entrance, growling softly, a warning rather than aggression. I disarmed the rudimentary tripwire system Miguel had installed, its simplicity masking its effectiveness. Inside, the space revealed itself as a masterpiece of tactical design: reinforced walls, carefully placed supplies, and a vantage point offering unparalleled surveillance over key locations. But it was the contents of a waterproof document case that sent chills down my spine. Miguel had left behind detailed maps tracing cartel supply routes, annotated with precise observations about patterns of movement. There were lists, names of individuals suspected of betrayal within military ranks, their connections to compromised operations painstakingly documented. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just evidence of corruption. It was a roadmap to dismantling a network that stretched into the highest echelons of power. Yet, the most alarming discovery was a recent entry noting increased cartel activity in the region. They were closing in, tightening their net around Jaime, Valor, and anyone connected to them. Time was running out. The temperature inside the observation post offered little relief from the freezing conditions outside. My breath fogged the air as I studied the documents, piecing together the bigger picture. Valor remained vigilant, his ears twitching at every rustle beyond the rocky walls. His instincts told him danger was near even if unseen. Outside, the wind intensified, whipping snow flurries across the ridge. Visibility dropped sharply, creating a whiteout effect that made retreat nearly impossible without risking exposure. Each second felt heavier than the last, the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. These weren't just papers, they were Jaime's lifeline, Valor's mission, and perhaps the only hope of bringing Miguel back safely. I secured the documents, ensuring nothing was disturbed, then signaled Valor to prepare for departure. As we exited, something caught my eye, a faint glow in the valley below. Flashlights, moving systematically, too organized to belong to hikers. Cartel scouts. We had minutes, maybe less, before they reached our location. Valor sensed the urgency, his body tensing as he glanced between me and the approaching lights. "We're leaving," I whispered, clipping his lead and guiding him toward a secondary escape route Miguel had clearly mapped out. The descent was treacherous, icy rocks threatening to send us tumbling at any moment. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder in my chest. If we were caught, it wouldn't just mean failure, it would mean death. For all of us. The documents Valor led me to were nothing short of explosive. Miguel's meticulous notes revealed a conspiracy that reached far beyond drug trafficking, a chilling alliance between the cartel and compromised elements within the U.S. military. Stolen military equipment, including advanced communication devices and tactical gear, had been smuggled into cartel hands through an intricate web of corruption. The serial numbers matched items officially listed as destroyed during inventory audits. But the paperwork was too perfect to be coincidence. Someone high up in the chain of command was orchestrating this betrayal, falsifying records to mask the diversion. It wasn't just about money. It was about power, arming the cartel with tools designed for warfare. My blood ran cold as I realized the implications. If these weapons fell into wider use, they could escalate cartel operations to catastrophic levels. Valor sniffed around the concealed compartment where the documents were stored, his nose twitching with recognition. He'd been here before, perhaps even helped Miguel stash these materials. The dog's behavior shifted suddenly. He became restless, ears perked, and began pacing toward the entrance of the observation post. Something had caught his attention outside. I followed his gaze, my own senses on high alert. The forest was silent, unnaturally so, like the calm before a storm. Then my phone buzzed an encrypted message from Agent Harper. Urgent. Cartel patrol team detected moving your direction. ETA 30 minutes. Extract immediately. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. We were sitting ducks if we stayed, but leaving now meant abandoning whatever clues Miguel might have left behind. Valor growled softly, his focus locked on something deeper in the woods. I hesitated, torn between duty and discovery. Valor, I whispered, crouching beside him. What is it? Is it Miguel? His response was unmistakable, a low whine, followed by a deliberate glance at a narrow game trail leading northeast. This wasn't random movement. He recognized something or someone. My mind raced. If Miguel was nearby, injured or worse, every second counted. But the approaching cartel team loomed large in my thoughts. Their movements weren't accidental. They were hunting us, closing in like predators. I made a split-second decision. Okay, boy. Lead the way, but fast. I clipped Valor's tactical harness securely, ensuring he wouldn't overexert himself despite his eagerness. As we moved, I activated the GPS tracker Maya had provided, marking our route in case extraction became necessary. Every step felt heavier than the last, the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. Valor navigated the dense underbrush with precision, his training overriding his physical limitations. His determination was palpable, driving us forward despite the danger. The forest grew darker, shadows stretching long under the moonlight. Valor stopped abruptly, his body rigid, hackles raised. Ahead, barely visible, was a faint glimmer of light, a signal flare. A trap? Or Miguel's lifeline? The clock was ticking, and every choice carried deadly consequences. As the storm clouds gathered above us, I realized Valor wasn't just a guardian or a military asset. He was the linchpin holding this entire mission together. Every step he took brought us closer to Miguel. Every instinctive pause revealed another piece of the puzzle that had been meticulously hidden by his handler. Without Valor, we'd be blind lost in a labyrinth of clues left behind by a man who knew how to vanish without a trace. The realization hit me like a punch. If Valor faltered, if his strength gave out, we'd lose more than our guide. We'd lose any chance of finding Jaime's father alive. The temperature plummeted as the first flakes of snow began to fall, delicate at first, but soon thickening into a relentless cascade. The wind screamed through the pines, turning the forest into a maelstrom of white chaos. Visibility dropped to mere feet, and the path Valor had been following disappeared beneath the accumulating snow. My tactical gear felt woefully inadequate against the biting cold, and Valor's breaths came heavier now, his body still recovering from weeks of starvation and neglect. But there was no time to rest. We were running out of both daylight and options. Valor pressed forward, his nose low to the ground, sniffing for traces of Miguel's scent despite the overwhelming interference of fresh snow. His determination was staggering, even as his paws sank deeper into the drifts with each step. He paused suddenly, ears swiveling toward a distant sound, the faint hum of engines. Not natural, not wildlife. Cartel vehicles. They were closer than I'd feared, their headlights cutting through the storm like predators' eyes in the dark. We need shelter, I muttered, scanning the terrain for anything that could shield us from the worsening conditions. Valor seemed to understand, turning sharply toward a cluster of boulders partially buried under centuries of sediment. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Together, we scrambled into the shallow alcove, huddling close as the storm intensified around us. The dog's warmth radiated against my side, a small comfort amidst the freezing tempest. But safety was an illusion. The cartel's movements weren't random, they were calculated, methodical. Their search patterns suggested they were closing in on our position, drawn perhaps by tracks we couldn't see or sounds we couldn't control over the howling winds. Valor growled softly, his body tense, ready to defend even in his weakened state. "Easy, boy," I whispered, gripping his harness firmly. "We're not done yet." I activated the GPS tracker Maya had provided, marking our location before powering it down to conserve battery. If Harper's team found us, or if Miguel somehow intercepted the signal, it might be our only lifeline. Valor shifted slightly, nudging his head against my arm. His amber eyes caught the dim light filtering through the storm, reflecting a mix of exhaustion and resolve. He trusted me to get us through this, just as I trusted him to lead us to Miguel. The hours dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Our supplies dwindled dangerously low, and Valor's energy flagged visibly. Yet, when the storm finally began to subside, he stood once more, shaking off the accumulated snow with a defiant shake. Outside, the world was transformed, a pristine blanket of white masking everything, including any evidence of where we'd come from or where we needed to go. Valor sniffed the air, then looked back at me, waiting for the command to move forward. "Lead the way, soldier," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. With Valor guiding us, we stepped back into the unknown, knowing full well that danger lurked just beyond the horizon. The weight of everything pressed down on me as I sat in the dim light of the concealed observation post, Valor lying alertly beside me. Each discovery we'd made here painted a clearer picture of Miguel's desperate situation and my own growing connection to it. This wasn't just about saving Jaime and Valor anymore. This was about redemption, about proving that the skills I thought lost to PTSD still had purpose. For months after my medical discharge, I'd wandered through life like a ghost, haunted by memories of missions gone wrong and comrades left behind. But now, staring at Miguel's meticulously documented surveillance logs and contingency plans, I realized something profound. Healing wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about using it to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Valor shifted slightly, his amber eyes reflecting the faint glow of my tactical flashlight. He wasn't just a military asset or a guardian. He was a bridge between me and the world I'd tried so hard to leave behind. Every instinctive move he made reminded me of Cairo, my former canine partner, whose loyalty had saved my life more times than I could count. Yet Valor carried an even heavier burden. He bore the trust of a father who had gambled everything to keep his son safe. As I reviewed the maps detailing cartel movements and compromised military channels, I understood the stakes more clearly than ever. The cartel wasn't just hunting Miguel. They were systematically dismantling anyone who stood in their way. If they found Jaime, if they discovered Valor's location, the consequences would be catastrophic. But there was no turning back now. The encrypted tablet buzzed softly, breaking the silence. A new message blinked onto the screen, a single line from Miguel himself. "I'm still alive, but time is running out." My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a plea for help. It was a warning. Whatever Miguel had uncovered, whatever shadowy network he'd exposed, it was closing in on him and by extension on us. Valor perked up at the sound of the notification, his ears twitching toward the device. He didn't understand the words, but he recognized urgency when he saw it. "We'll find him," I whispered, more to myself than to Valor. "We have to." The dog's unwavering gaze held mine, as if he understood every word. In that moment, I felt the full weight of responsibility, not just for Jaime and Valor, but for Miguel too. This wasn't just another mission, it was personal. Every nightmare I'd faced in the mountains, every sleepless night spent reliving old battles, had led me here. And maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to make peace with the ghosts of my past. Yet the road ahead loomed dark and uncertain. Cartel operatives were already tightening their net, their movements becoming bolder, more calculated. Harper's team might provide some security, but I knew better than to rely solely on official channels. If Miguel was right about the infiltration within military ranks, then trust was a luxury none of us could afford. Valor nudged my arm gently, pulling me back to the present. His steady presence grounded me, reminding me why I couldn't give up. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, carrying with it the promise of storms yet to come. We were running out of time, but not hope. Not while Valor and I still had each other.